Thank you everyone for your attention and your courtesy and for coming out tonight. We are going to spend some time in a Q&A focused dialogue here with facilitation. Again, if you are here to make a comment or state an opinion strongly, that is something that's better served in writing. There are lots of ways to do that. Recognizing people are going to have opinions. Those might come out no matter what. We'll start taking hands across the room, especially if you're in the front. Please do wait for the microphone and for recognition. You're in front. Can you reach your?
Oh, no hurry. No.
Oh, sure.
First.
There you go.
Okay, my name is Peter Haas, native of Yosemite. I have recently written a book called Born in Yosemite, which has 4 chapters devoted to why we're here. And first, I very sympathize with the job you have because you are under a great deal of outside political pressures, which you would be better off without. But my question is, and I focus on your footnote 5 and the activities which you proposed to be eliminated, which have been part of the historical experiences in Yosemite which people treasure. And there are many, many people who have told me that they treasure the experiences of coming to Yosemite. Now my question is, does the Park Service take the position that any court, any law has mandated or obligated you to eliminate any historical recreational activity?
So has the court mandated the elimination?
Yeah. So Peter, I'm going to answer that and get Kathleen off the hook a little bit. The answer, we have to follow the law. Is there a mandated that the bicycle rentals? What we did is a very systematic process which we believe would stand up in court. But again, remember this is a draft plan, and you and I talked in the hallway. If you feel strongly, let's just take bicycle rentals. I mean, we do have some options, so we want to hear those ideas. And we're not saying the court mandated, we do believe the court gave us some guidance, and they want a systematic thinking, and so that's how we're handling it. And these laws in some respects are vague. I mean, and then we get guidelines from DOI, Department of Interior, but we're doing our best to try to follow this. Pardon me? And they're in conflict too. There's the Historic Preservation Act, and you should come do my job for a day and so see how difficult it is.
So the answer is, court didn't order it. It's your interpretation of the law that says you have to do it. Is that right?
Well, we're using it as guidance, the court cases and the laws, and we're trying to do our best job to move forward. And again, there will be the first to say there are judgment calls, and that's why we're going through a public process to make sure we get the best judgment. And quite frankly, we're trying to ensure as we go forward that we don't go back to court. We would love to implement something and not be in court for the next 10 years.
So from that, final question, is there anything that's non-negotiable?
No, I mean, I think we have to follow the law. Don Newbacher probably couldn't build a gigantic hotel right on the banks of the Merced River, and we're not proposing that, but we do need to meet the intent of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. But we'll talk a little bit more later. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. I didn't go all the way through the agenda earlier, but there is time set aside at the end of the meeting for these types of in-depth questions where you're getting into judgment calls and nuances and really parsing things out. Those are good one-on-one topics, and that's why we built an open house period at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. You'll have time for in-depth conversations and really digging into these issues after we finish the group process here, the group conversation. So, gentlemen in the green, then I think you're next.
Very briefly, first got to thank the park staff, you guys. Thanks a lot. 2 things. I really support the whole concept of dealing with the traffic congestion in Yosemite Valley. The approach, the numbers are close to the GMP numbers. I've always been a carrying capacity freak on this, but the approach seems very appropriate. It kind of reminds me of Jan Van Wagendonk and the wilderness approach, where we phased it in very slowly. We made sure the public understood what we were doing. We only went as far as we had to go. So Don, thank you. I think that's a nice approach. Very briefly on the second issue, I was hung up, as many of my friends, on I'm having a problem why we're removing facilities that actually get visitors out of their cars and into the resource. I mean, well, you can argue about it forever. Briefly, I think looking at things that could be removed, like administrative facilities, and I mean, you guys are the best judge of this, to make room for visitor activities, an excellent idea. Moving a bike stand, boy, I really have a problem with that. Or the horses or the raft. Third, thank you for the campsites. I really appreciate that, you guys.
Again, if you have a problem with something, that is something that would be perfect to submit in writing. Recognizing this public forum, you can say what you want within reason with a civil public process. If you want to make a suggestion or strong opinion, that's what the written comments are for. Yes, ma'am?
My question is just, you didn't talk about the Wawona area at all. Was there any plan to remove the golf course? And is that within a quarter mile of the river? And then also, is the ice rink planned on the preferred alternative? Is the ice rink being removed?
Golf course and ice rink.
And the preferred alternative for the valley, the ice rink is scheduled to be removed or planned to be proposed. And the preferred alternative for one of the golf course remains. We did have an alternative that looked at taking it out. Jim, is alternative 2? The golf course comes out?
2, am I thinking 3?
3,
And
okay.
is it within a quarter mile of the river?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I can't help myself. Here, I actually bought your book, and I've enjoyed it. So thank you for the product. I wanted to tell you the word non-negotiable was in the commentary. I actually used the word non-negotiable, and what I was referring to was protection of the resource, the river values is non-negotiable. That's mandated by law. That's really how that terminology came to be. So just so you know, kind of, if that gets floated around, that's really the context of that.
My name is Peggy DeBiser, and I'm on the board of directors for the Mariposa Mountain Riders. And we've had rides up in the outer loop up at Wawona. I also camp up in Wawona and Bridal Veil quite frequently with my horses. And when we go up and we ride the outer loop, the tourists love seeing the horses. The kids love coming up and petting the horses. And if you guys are to take the horses out, that would be such a crime because they've been there since the beginning of time. And that's something that people enjoy. They enjoy seeing them. And without the mules and the horses, you wouldn't get your supplies in the backcountry. We clean up a lot. We spend a lot of time, when we leave a campground, it's cleaner than the regular campgrounds because we want to leave a good imprint. And another thing, one of my favorite things in the park is riding bicycles in the valley. It makes you slow down and it makes you appreciate the beauty and see things. I think to take the bicycles out, the ice skating rink and that stuff out of the valley, I think that would be a horrible thing to do because it brings people out, it makes people active. We have too many kids that sit down and sit and all they do is look at a computer. Gets people out and exercises and you see the beauty of the park.
Thank you.
Can I clarify a couple things? Sorry, before we move on, let me clarify a couple things. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that just important to know, private horse riding is not being, we're not saying anything about private horse riding. It can still occur. We would still be providing day rides in Wawona for rental horses. The stables would still operate in Wawona.
And what about the campground?
Yeah, the campground will still be provided. Yes, the stock campground. Yes, absolutely. So the private uses, and I can totally appreciate what you're saying. In the valley, we would still have the stables and the mules and things like that. They still service the ICR camp under the preferred alternative. But the thing that would not be offered any longer would be the day rides in the valley. So just that 1 or 2 hour day rides. But they would remain in Wawona and private stock use. Yeah, oh yeah. And the private stock use would continue as well as private bicycle riding and private rafting. That would all continue to be totally fine. We would prefer.
So it may sound like a broken record. That's a perfect thing for a written comment. And I was reminded we do have some written comment forms. If you want to put that down in writing, encourage others to do that. That's your right. That's the process we're in. That's a perfect example of a written comment, a strong opinion. So get that in writing. The Park Service wants to hear that in your writing, in writing. So other questions, thoughts over here? Oh yeah, sorry.
Chris, can you just help out?
Hi, my name is Natasha
I see
Bookout.
hands. You're next. I'll call you.
I'm a resident of Mariposa, and I have lived in Yosemite, and I grew up going to Yosemite.
I love the horses, but I'm curious, okay, if we take out the ice rink, bike rentals, what else were we taking out? Rafting. Okay, that's a lot of revenue, and you want to pay for these new permanent buildings. I'm kind of against the permanent buildings. I know my friend has a ranch here that's in the conservation, and he's not allowed to put anything permanent on it. So where are you going to get this revenue if you take out all this revenue to build these permanent buildings?
Okay, so the revenue that you're talking about is actually a small percentage of the total revenue that's collected. So the items that we're talking about removing are really small contributors in the big scheme of things. And also by converting the hard-sided units from tent cabins over to hard-sided units, we'll have a revenue increase. And additionally, by providing additional camping, which is more overnight guests, we anticipate more expenditure from those campers. And so basically we've got a wash. And when we look at the economic analysis that we had done for the plan, the preferred alternative really is employment, job, revenue neutral in the big sense. It makes very, very little change in the overall sense because of those compensating factors. So that's the thought behind it, because we have looked at that.
Real quick, what would replace the ice rink? A parking lot, a permanent asphalt parking lot?
Question is, what would replace the ice rink?
You can look at the way the site plan is designed, where the current ice rink is and what we proposed there. It's primarily traffic configuration and parking. You'll have to look in the bigger document, or I can give you a copy of that. It's part of the overall design for that area, so it kind of works in concert with the traffic flow, the parking, the hard-sided units that we're providing for employee housing. It's all part of the mix. Some things get taken out, other things get put in.
Again, if you remove those facilities, what employees are going to get this housing? Is this just NPS? I mean, who are these employees? We lose those employees. You take out the state.
Okay, let's be clear. We're talking concessions employees. We're not talking NPS employees. We're talking the concessionaire.
I'm curious. If you take out ice rink, you lose ice rink employees.
Right, but we still have over 1,000 concession employees that we need to
That
house.
need housing.
Yes, and they're living in temporary housing. We wouldn't be adding more. We'd be replacing that temporary housing with permanent housing.
Kathleen, is the presentation on the jobs and the socioeconomics of the proposed alternatives, is that online for people to look at to see what the job numbers are?
Yes, we did. We had a webinar on socioeconomics, so you can dig in more deeply into that as well.
And see how many jobs this proposed alternative would create that was presented last week.
Again, I know, if you take those out, I wouldn't go to the park. I'm not an avid hiker. I'll ride a horse, I'll ride a mule, I ice skate, I raft, I rent bikes because I can't afford those expensive bikes. And I'm looking here at the private rafts. Well, those are $600 kayaks that I can't afford.
Thank you for the comments. We're going to try and keep it moving. There are a lot of people
So
that
I wouldn't go to Yosemite.
That's something to put in writing. That's an opinion. That's a comment that's really best suited in writing. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Spuck, and I'm a resident of Mariposa. Myself and my family have enjoyed Yosemite. My father helped build the roads up there, going through the tunnel to Wawona. And so when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in Yosemite, but one of the things that I remember and I'm very fond of is my experience as a child, knee-high to a grasshopper, where my dad took me on the 6-day paddock trip up into the high country. And I'm incredibly saddened to learn that some of the things that are proposed are not in tune with I don't feel are really in tune with some of the Park Service's own mission statement, which says that the National Park Service preserves unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system for enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. That's just part of it. But that sentence says that, to me, that we should be allowed, even if we don't have our own horses, to visit some of those ICR camps. They're very inspiring. I understand there's some problems up there, but my question really is this. In Table 7.1 on the draft plan, analysis of local effects on river values, I don't see where the concessionaires, the raft rental, the ice rink, the stable day rides, bike rental, or the Awani swimming pool have no effect on river values, and there are no required actions or mitigation measures. So why are you removing them?
The answer to that question comes down to, it wasn't just one thing. It was the trifecta of reasons that we looked at the facilities to be removed, and we proposed what we did in the draft. We had to also look at the Wild Snake Rivers Act requirements. Is it necessary for public use? That is subjective, granted. If it is not necessary, can it be relocated? That type of thing, I explained that. We also looked at the court opinion and the footnote 5 direction that says, make a conscious choice. So that was our thinking, that was our rationale. We're hearing a lot of concern about that, and I can't underscore enough the importance of providing public comment as to what you feel about that approach. So please do.
I will.
Thank you, Dennis.
My name's Brad Aborn, and I live in Mid-Pines, and I'm going to add a little bit to the horse thing. In Mid-Pines and Mariposa County, and even beyond, we have the Mountain Riders group. And Yosemite is one of the attractions there. I'm trying not to be repetitious on this, but anyway. But what I see is if we close the stables down, and that's another item in itself, because this is something, these are these extra things for people as they experience Yosemite. And my first time up here was in 1953 when my brother brought me up here. And I've been married more than once, and Yosemite is my lasting love affair. It really is a special, special place. I've flown Yosemite in our company helicopters. I've flown Yellowstone and Grand Canyon and so many different places as far as national parks go. And Yosemite stands way above. Just such a beautiful place, so concentrated and everything. But what I see in this program here is that we're going to start eliminating certain things. There are various groups within the community here and way and beyond that want to stop this. Whether it's manure on the hiking trails, bridle trails, and things like that, and shaking. But anyway, not to get long on this, but can't think of the man's name now in England, but anyway, the experience of seeing something on horseback, it's just like having a convertible car and driving Yosemite, and I've done that. And it's just fantastic. And same with riding. And what scares me, and we have Yosemite Ranch in Mid-Pines, it's state approved and everything, so we are Yosemite Ranch. And this is that important to us. I came up here after I retired, and here I am. But anyway, back on the horse thing though. What I see is if we close the stables for the public, the next thing is going to be is those that don't want horses in the park, even though historically horses have been in the park for almost forever. And if that happens, private ownership of horses riding in the park is going to end. Thank you.
There's some real passion for the horses from lots of corners.
Yeah, but let's be, just so we're clear, the stables aren't going to close. Overnight, horseback riding, boarding, all that will continue. The only proposal is some of the day riding. So just so we're clear, I don't want anybody to leave today saying we're closing the stables. That is not the case. All the pack animals going back to the backcountry continues. It was just a day ride proposal.
And that's yet another comment that will not be part of the official consideration unless it's submitted in writing. So, once again, please do submit those in writing. The more voices that speak up in favor of these types of activities, the more they're going to be considered in that generation report. The official consideration is part of this government process. So, I'm going to have to keep hitting that. People are going to keep putting out comments and opinions and passions that are not questions, but those types of things that really feel appear to be better suited to writing up. That's something that has to keep being said. So let's keep moving.
Okay, I'm Pat Oliver. Can I come? Can I say something? Okay, I'm a Yosemite kid. I was born and raised there. As far as the stables, surely they could still allow the mule trips up so people can see Berlin, Nevada Falls, as long as taking the mules up for the high country. Number two, why are you taking the swimming pools out? You can't swim in the river all the time, and I don't see how that's such a bad thing to still have in the valley. Maybe with the legislation they can't do that, I don't know. One other quick point, I'm for moving the garage out, but I was pointing out that if you're going to move the garage over to the government center, to what you call the fort, you should definitely, of course, have it available to visitors for emergencies and also for trains.
So was that a question about the mule rides, or was that a statement?
That's a statement, but I mean,
have you
considered to allow that?
Has it been considered to keep the mule rides?
Just to Berlin, Nevada Falls.
Not too long. Well, no, we've considered everything. So what we want to do now is hear what we need to reconsider. And I think you just made the statement that that's something we need to reconsider. So again, that's a comment that we will take into consideration as we look at finalizing the plan. And really, I mean, all the passion here tonight, and all the people who have been here for so long and spent so much time, and just, I can't tell you how valuable it is to hear from you directly. So please, don't give up on this whole process. We're working through it. This is a draft, and your comments are very important to us. And so keep it going, keep coming.
So we've got a comment here, and then the gentleman in the back, please. And it's great if you can stick your hand up a little higher so that I can help keep things moving. That's the facilitator, that's my job. All right.
Okay, my name's Ann Bates, and luckily I have a horse now, but for 45 years, I tent camped every single summer for 2 weeks, sometimes twice, sometimes a whole month, split up. But my family we were packed to the gills, couldn't bring a bicycle, couldn't bring a raft. And so we camped in Wawona, but we would spend the day down in the valley. And we would rent a raft or rent a bike, and we would not have been able to, we had no room in our car for that. And then also on the Mariposa Grove, if you're planning on taking out the trams, that's going to really limit the people who are going to be able to experience the sequoias. The young, the old, the disabled, the not so fit, that can't really hike, they're going to miss out. And it's going to be only the fit that can hike to the upper grove at least. It's steep.
Thank you for that comment. Gentleman in the back.
My name's Bob Barrett, and my question is that if you're going to leave the valley stables in, what's your criteria on eliminating day rides in the valley floor?
What's the criteria for eliminating day rides in the valley floor? If those were to be eliminated?
The reason for it. Yeah, why?
Right, it goes back to the same trifecta that I mentioned before. The Wild Snake Rivers Act, is it really necessary? Is it necessary for public use? We can debate that. It's a subjective term. You're telling us that we're hearing that. We're hearing that. That's a perspective that we're hearing. Is it having an impact on river values? That's another thing that we look at, those types of things. The criteria for moving them also stems from the court direction to take a hard look at the commercial activity going on in the valley and make some decisions, some conscious choice about what should continue. All those things collectively are what gave us the list that we came up with. Now, why we're here is we need to hear from the public about what you think about that. So we're hearing, that was the rational basis. We started with that direction and needed to put something on paper to move us forward so we have something to work with.
If I'm a private citizen, could I ride in the Florida Valley?
Yes. You can ride the places that you've been riding before.
No,
okay.
If I brought my own horse in, would I be allowed to ride in Florida Valley as a private individual?
Yes. Yes.
Yes?
Yes. There's no change or any restrictions
on private
horses.
Where would I park my vehicle?
Well, that's a side conversation. If you notice, we're creating some additional parking, but the answer is yes.
Okay, I want to just take stock of who we got lined up. This gentleman is smarter than this fellow. I've seen the lady in the back with her hand up for a little while, and a couple more after that. So we've got quite a stack of people. Please be patient. Thank you as we move along. But this fellow had to stand up. Wait for the mics. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I just have a short question, but maybe I'm missing something here. But I'm Bill Collier, and you know, you talk about the values, and I'm just curious: has the Merced River water quality been impaired by the commercial activities that we're proposing here to eliminate? And if so, how? And is there a way of mitigating that if there is an impairment? You know, you'd think, well, maybe the cattle, oh, not the cattle, the horses, there'd be a food problem. I don't know. Okay, but it, you know, it depends on distance and whether the coliforms actually get into the water and things like that. But could you respond to that? Because the real issue is, has the water quality in the Merced River been substantially impaired by commercial activity?
Well, you know, I would direct you to Chapter 5 of the document where we have a baseline conditions assessment of all the resources. And the answer is that no, actually the water quality in the Merced River is pristine. It's fabulous. And we're so proud of that. Same with the Tuolumne River. It's a fantastic resource. Now there may be localized impacts, you know, sedimentation and things that happen in a localized area of concentrated use. Those are the things we try to prevent by moving things away from the river, by employing best mitigation practices when we do any kind of construction project and things like that. We try to be very proactive in preventing changes to the water quality, and as a result, we've been able to maintain a very high level of water quality. So that particular issue isn't what's pushing us in this direction to reduce the amount of activity.
Okay. Woman in the back in the green sweater after this gentleman, and then 1, 2.
Yeah, my name is John Sullivan. I'm a resident of Mariposa, and I was wondering about, in 4 of your 6 plans, you have taken out the bridges. Has there been a study done that any way they can do something to the bridges without taking them out? Because, I mean, that's the flavor of Yosemite. I mean, I don't know how many people jumped off Stoneman's Bridge when they were kids like me. And I hate to see that go.
Yeah, there are some studies that are available on the website. The studies that we've done in particular have looked at the effect of the bridges on free-flowing condition and done a quantification of how that would be improved if those bridges would be removed. The studies in terms of how to address the problems that the bridges are causing, there's a number of techniques that we can look at employing. They're somewhat experimental right now. There's no real definitive answer to that. So we would be looking at employing some of those techniques in the preferred alternative for the Stoneman and the Ahwahnee bridges, because they have a little bit less impact than the sugar pine, obviously. Right? So we think we'd be more successful employing some of those techniques and strategies on those bridges, and that's why we're looking at doing that in the preferred.
Yeah, I was wondering, there must be a way to do something for the bridge without taking the whole thing down. We have engineers.
I know.
Okay, moving along just to try and keep it going. In the back here, and then the flat.
What specifically, if you remove the ice rink, what specifically is taking its place? And then my other question is as you hear the gentleman in front talk about people jumping off the bridge, have you factored in the health and safety aspect of this? Because as you remove recreational opportunities, biking, rafting, ice skating, you're going to have a lot of employees that are customarily used to using, approved equipment and approved recreation opportunities. They're going to be inventing their own, such as where will they go ice skating? If there's no swimming pools, where will they go swimming? And there are areas that people should probably not be going because it surpasses their abilities. But with removing all these items for recreational opportunities and increasing these campgrounds, they're going to be sitting around trying to figure out what can we do for entertainment. And some of the reasons why the ice rink was put in before is I thought people were going into areas where the river was frozen over and pools, and so it was giving a safe atmosphere for people to go ice skating. Same way with the swimming and some of these recreational opportunities. So has it factored in some of the health and safety concerns that you could be triggering a whole another area of concern in the park management?
So we had a question in there about what would replace the ice rink, and then was there consideration of the safety in this development, this draft plan?
Right. You know, I think that with regard to the first question, what I'd like to do is put that off until we can get to the boards and we can actually look at those things, and we can actually show you what the site designs are, look at the documents together. In my mind, I see a comprehensive strategy for how that area should be redeveloped. I don't see an isolated, right, where the ice rink was versus vis-a-vis what's there now in our proposal, so I can't give you an accurate answer. I'd rather wait till later. The health and safety aspects of changing one facility for another, removing some of those activities, we haven't explicitly looked at that, so I think that that's a comment that you want to add to the mix, that we take that in consideration. I think Mrs. Oliver had a similar comment in terms of some other things that we hadn't really considered fully that she wanted us to look at. That's totally great to hear. I mean, it's good input for us to take back and chew on.
Okay, coming here, and then more.
My name is Jim Dolce, and I was listening to Mr. Barrett's comment from the back, and I think, the way I understood him to say, if we take all the stables out of the valley, then we don't have a place to put pack horses, so how are you going to pack to the high country? My side of that take is you're discriminating against one segment of the population. You're allowing people to pack the high country, but you're telling people who want to ride a horse in the valley that they can't. That's discrimination. That's not allowed in our law. So you need to overcome that somehow. And if you're going to have pack horses, you got to have stables. So if you have stables, continue the riding.
Let me clarify once more that we're not taking the stables out of the valley. We are not taking the stables out. Neither the Park Service nor the concessionaire stables are coming out. The only thing that's on the table that we're talking about in the preferred alternative is not offering day rides, okay? So let's not all walk away with the idea that the stables are being removed. We're not taking the stables out. It's not in the preferred alternative at all, okay?
So what have you gained? If you don't take out stables?
We've gained, what we have gained is less conflict with stock and hikers on the most popular trail systems, so we've gained some of that. And granted, that may not be how you see it, but that's one of the aspects we see. We've also gained a reduction in commercial activity. Those are trade-offs. And some would say, we don't see that as an issue, we don't see it as a problem. That's fine, that's what we need to hear. What is your perspective? You know, and you've shared it with us tonight. So that's exactly why we're here, okay? So in our minds, in the way we proposed it, I gave the rationale for why we looked at these commercial activities the way we did, why we made some of the choices we did. But now we need to hear, what do you think about that? Because it's time for you to get involved. The hikers out? Okay.
So if you'll wait just a moment, we do have a comment up here.
Go.
Two raised hands went up back there.
Yes, my name is Wendy Brown Berry, and I've lived in Mariposa since 1971. I've ridden to all the High Sierra camps. I love Yosemite as well. I have a couple of different things. We talked about bridges. I found a contradiction. I am reading the environmental impact statement. So I have one question about that. In chapter 8, page 274, it says in segment 2 of your environmental deal, alternative 6 says it's going to remove the Sugar Pine Bridge. And then when you go to your summary chart, it says 0 bridges removed.
Do you want to answer that, May?
Sure, I can answer that, and I can just say that that's a simple copy-paste error, and it is unfortunate, but you're talking about alternative 6, and it's true that no bridges are removed. We're employing engineered solutions to try to enhance the free-flowing condition of the river, and that error is in an errata sheet posted on our website. And if you see anything else, please do let us know.
Okay, I have something else. As though these activities that we're talking about are historical, and you have these ORVs, and you talk a lot in your environmental impact statement about history, Have you considered putting a historical ORV into your plan to make these things historical so we can preserve them, especially the High Sierra camps?
Okay, so the quick answer, the short answer to that is we do have a cultural ORV which includes a historical component, which includes the National Historical Landmarks, among other things. Where we run into an issue, in particular with ORVs and thinking about some of these activities, is remember an ORV needs to be river related or river dependent. So you have to ask yourself, are some of these activities river dependent? They're not, but they're not important. But to be an ORV, we need to be clear that it needs to be a river-related, river-dependent activity. So clearly some things are, some things aren't. So that's the test that we use to look at whether or not something should be included as an ORV. Now that being said, remember Wild and Scenic Rivers Act allows for, in fact, suggests that you want to provide for public use. So it doesn't say just because it's not an ORV, it isn't important. So we need to remember that. So what we're trying to do with this plan is strike that balance. So everything that's not an ORV doesn't necessarily mean it's not important, it's not protected, and it's not part of the mix.
I have one last quote to share from your environmental impact statement. Chapter 5, protecting and enhancing the free-flowing condition. The free-flowing condition of the Merced River is determined to be absent of adverse effects, degradation, and management concerns. And if this is true, why are we removing all this infrastructure? If it's not scientifically,
I want to look at that page in chapter 5 because I think it is a true statement. Remember, we have a definition of adverse impact and degradation. We define what that means in the context of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. My assumption, having not had that in front of me, is that we've looked at that definition and the bridge situation does not rise to that level. We have a concern about the bridges, and that's one of those site-specific actions that we want to address, so site-specific impacts that we want to address, but it doesn't necessarily rise to the level of adverse impact or degradation. So that's my assumption, but I want to take another look at that and make sure that tracks with what we're saying.
My question is about the use of the word commercial. Okay, now in your, is a visitor service provided for the enjoyment of the public commercial?
Visitor service for the public commercial?
Yes. Are you basing anything on the fact that you think a visitor service provided for the enjoyment of the public is commercial?
What would your answer be?
It's not commercial. To my mind, commercial uses that you want to eliminate from Yosemite are mining, logging, sheep grazing, any business conducted in Yosemite. But a service provided for the enjoyment of visitors is not commercial in my view.
Again, a really great fit for a written comment. We're hearing a lot of...
You'll see it.
We're hearing a lot of support for these traditional services. I did speak over this gentleman in the vest back there, next to the woman who just spoke. I'd like to get back to him. This gentleman with the scarf and this gentleman with the plastic. I'd like to maybe hear a new voice if we haven't yet.
Hi, my name's Kevin Berry. I think what's really happened here is we have Yosemite Valley. Happens to have a river running through it that happened to become wild and scenic. Free-flowing condition, you're asking for a disaster. I mean, you're going to take out all these things and you want the banks to meander and stuff. You're going to move all these things around. River's going to come through and wipe it all out. Right now the stuff is working pretty well. Survived the 97 flood. There's all those bridges that are still there. The wild and scenic designation, I don't understand why it got stuck on Yosemite, because Yosemite has really never been wild, not even before 1850 when we discovered it. It was domesticated by the Indians that were there. They burned off the conifers, they allowed the black oaks to grow because they lived off of those. They enhanced their meadows and stuff like that. It's just not the right fit. I don't understand why you are getting stuck with this. I think the real problem that Yosemite had was congestion and stuff, which could have been better answered with a good traffic plan and maybe moving some buildings around and stuff like that. But the wild and scenic aspect, it just doesn't really make sense. You know, it's a developed area is what it is.
Thank you for that perspective. That's helpful. Yes, ma'am.
We have a transient rental guest house, or whatever you want to call it, in Mariposa, and we have our guests take day trips into the park. how are you going to handle the day visitors when your capacity for day visitors has been met? How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to make them turn around, or how are you going to do it?
Okay, so the idea, and again, the Corps and the Wild St. Rivers Act tells us we have to establish a user capacity. So we have to set a limit, basically. And really, there is a realistic limit. We manage to a limit right now by on those very peak days. We had 3 of them this year. Turning people around, last year, we're turning people around at the LCAP crossover. Okay, so wouldn't it make more sense on those peak days to be able to give people advance information about what they can expect? Because we want them to come into the park. We don't want to shut the gates of the park and close the park, but we want to guide them to a place that's less congested, so we have time for things to work themselves out in the valley. So how will we do that? So the idea is it's a systems problem. It's more than just one fix. What we have now is some applications that can give you real-time traffic information. We're developing those, so people as they approach the park from various destinations can get a sense of what's going on where and make choices about where they should go. We've also worked very diligently with the gateway communities to really get more engagement with them so they can direct people once they get to the gateways of some alternative destinations if the East Valley is full at any point in time. Eventually, where we think we can manage it right now with a better systems design, we're looking at an estimated 20,000 people that we can accommodate with free-flowing conditions with actually a pretty good experience. Right now, we rarely get days that are higher than that, even in the peak days. So right now, we feel pretty confident that we can accommodate visitation as we have in the past. If it gets to a point where visitation continues to grow, there are limits that we're going to be realized just as we're realizing them now. So what we would do is we'd have the staging area number 1, where we'd get people to pull over, talk to them about some alternative destinations, get them off the road so we're not causing congestion at the gates where people are getting more and more frustrated because they can't come into the park. Give them some reorientation, help guide them through different destinations in the park until the traffic clears out in the valley. We have real-time traffic communications now where we know what's going on in the parking areas in the valley. That would be part of the fix. We'll be able to communicate when things get full. We can give people that notice as they come into the gates and reach LCAP crossover. Now, the other thing that comes into play is that remote parking area. Okay? So if we can tell people before they get out of Mariposa, as they start coming up the hill, hey, East Valley's parking full, stop in El Portal, catch the bus, take it into the valley. That will alleviate some of that congestion as well. So all of those components we think will work together to help us better manage those really peak days. Ultimately, we may have to go to some sort of reservation system if visitation continues to grow. And so that type of reservation system would be something we don't want to design right now as part of the plan, because we don't know how people will respond to the different incentives if we put them in play. We'd rather take time to do it carefully, methodically, test some ideas, work with the gateway communities, work with the public to design a system that works well for everybody. Because as we saw with Half Dome, we don't know exactly how people are going to respond to reservations. They respond in ways we could never have predicted. So we don't want to codify anything or have a hard line right now as how that system will play itself out. We want to take the time to do it right and test it. So that's how it plays out. It's a systems approach, it's an iterative process, and it's adaptive.
Just a time check, we have been going about 50 minutes as opposed to the 40 that we originally planned. We're eating up into our open house period. That is because there have been a lot of passionate comments, a lot of hands up in the air. It's important to hear voices for everybody or lots of folks to get a chance to speak. I'm sorry if not everyone will get a chance to speak. We are going to wrap it up after about probably 2 or 3 more comments. So I saw a hand over here. I would like to hear some new voices. So I'd like to hear somebody, this gentleman over here. You okay with me for a minute?
I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting. Sorry I was late, but I want to find out, what is this going to cost us for you people to do what you want to do there in the park by taking everything out? What is it going to cost us? Somebody has to take all these things out. You want to remove the buildings, you want to remove the concrete, you want to remove a lot of things that we've had up here since 1870 that I know of. And you want to take it out. It's worked fine prior to this, prior to what you're doing right now. It's working great, we're making money in the park. You're taking all these activities out of the park, you lose your money. You stop people from going to the park in their cars, they're losing money. And there's no way in the world you can prove to me that this project that you have right now is going to benefit Mariposa, Oakhurst, and all the mountain communities. Have you ever taken into consideration what it's going to do to our communities?
So there's a lot of things, but there's also a question, what would it cost?
Yeah. What would it cost to have you folks do what you want to do?
Okay.
What's it going to cost us? Because we're the ones that supposedly own the park, not the government.
Absolutely. And it's,
not the government,
right.
we do.
Gotcha. And that's...
So I want to know what you're going to...
That's how we feel too.
What kind of a bill you're going to send me?
Okay. Fair enough. That's a fair enough question. I want to just get us back on kind of the common thinking here. We're really not proposing removing a lot of stuff like cement, infrastructure, buildings. The lodging stays about the same in the preferred alternative. We add more camping. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and think, too far like we're really ripping and tearing and changing the whole nature of Yosemite. We heard loud and clear that people want the essence of Yosemite to be maintained. Part of that is what you've described. Kind of the eclectic mix of buildings, kind of funky infrastructure, just the whole feel of it, the experiences that we've had for a long time. We're talking about removing, as a proposal, selective facilities and services. A very small footprint, but obviously one that people care a lot about. So the cumulative effect, the cumulative cost of all of this is about $235 million. Now what that means for you, it means that we'll continue to charge entrance fees as we have. We'll continue to get a portion of the revenues from the concessionaire. We'll continue to use changes. The same revenue streams come in that we've had for years and years and years. We just redirect those fund sources to implement this project, okay? So it's not, and then in terms of what the effect is on Mariposa County, the gateway communities, and other entities and government organizations and locations, we have done a socioeconomic analysis that looks at the net impact of the preferred alternative and all of the alternatives. The preferred alternatives happens to have basically it's neutral in terms of economic impact, because everybody that's come to the park, the visitation levels will be maintained. It'll actually make things better because we'll have more people staying overnight and camping, or hard-sided units for longer overnight accommodations, expanding the shoulder season to some extent. So we don't anticipate, and our analysis does not show that there will be an economic impact on the county or the four-county region.
In terms of visitor spending, those numbers were presented last week in a socioeconomic presentation that is up on the web. Let's do one or two more comments and then we'll go to individual conversations, open house, more browsing, and different conversations. Yes, sir.
One of the things I noticed about your plan is that you're going to be pulling out like the snack bar, but happy aisles and snack bar, I think, at the camp and a place like that. So if you look at the general public out here, you'll notice that they all enjoy snack bars. So you pull these facilities out of the park, out of the different parts, you move everybody to an area. So you're going to crowd the store, other places, because people want to go get their soda pop or their ice cream. But if you keep facilities spread out, you keep the public spread out. That's part of the game. You've got to keep them spread out. Right now, you're playing the game with Talga Pass, not having budget to plow it. When people start pouring into the valley, there ain't being a place for them to go. You need to open that high country so that people can get out of the valley and go high. Thank you.
Comments and suggestions, all right. Again, comments and suggestions to be part of the record needs to be in writing. Let's transition now into the open house period. I want to thank you so much for coming, for your attention, for your passion. You all care so much about this. It's part of for who you are, your heritage, your life, your activities.
Thank you, Jenna. You obviously, it's really amazing to see this this turnout, this passion, this investment, and really appreciate it. So we want to once again encourage you to take summary guide home so you can dig into this in a little more detail. If you didn't, just another nuts and bolts tiny piece, if you did manage to sign in when you came in, it'd be great if you could do that. Drop your email address or your home address if you want to keep updated on the plan. Stay in touch. The timeline is April 18th when comments are due, and one of these cards that you've been seeing waving around has other open houses and ways to submit comments. So again, thank you all for coming, and there will be until 8 o'clock or so for you to have more conversations with Park Service